Shout out to G-Man Boxing. Where's the piss bottle? It's over there.
Alright people, review of the week time, and let's see, what will we start this talking about? Let's talk about Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall again. I know we're going on about it, but we gotta start the main talking point in the world of boxing. It really is sad. It's still a sad sight. It's still sad to see what happened on Saturday night. Josh Taylor said he felt he'd win the fight, and look, he's not going to come out and say he lost. You know, if a fighter did that, I'd be more worried about that than anything else, because I'd be like, why are you saying you lost? Most fighters always believe that they did enough to win. They always look for something to cling on to. He did say that there's no need for a rematch, which I don't agree with. I do think that there is a need for a rematch. I think that, well, when I was watching DAZN, DAZN's card tonight, that came up about the Josh Taylor rematch, and I think it was Eddie Hearn who said, and he's right in this regard, and he said that Jack Catterall can still be a world champion, which he can definitely, but he may never become undisputed, and he should be undisputed. He should have won that fight. And Eddie Hearn also said that he might fight for a world title next fight, which again, he more than likely will. Josh Taylor seems to hint that he's going up to 147. Now, he may fight for a world title next fight, but if he'd beaten Josh Taylor, he was demanding serious purses. He may only get a couple of $100,000 to fight God knows who for a world title. It's just shocking, and I think the saddest part is that this is a recurring theme in boxing, and boxing, unlike other sports, you have a team behind you, but in the ring it's you and your opponent. If you do enough to win the fight, it should be enough to get you the fight. I mean, like, I know this is a team game, maybe it's a poor analogy, but if you're United, we'll say Man United, they're playing City, and United play them off the field, win 3-0, they've won. It's not like someone's going to turn around and say, well, yeah, you scored more goals, but we just felt it's subjective and City really did get the better of you. You know, technically they had more passes and more possession. It doesn't work like that. You know, if you're playing darts and you're well in control and you're hitting all your doubles and you're scoring big, you're going to win. Boxing is the only sport where everyone can see you've done enough to win the fight. And that win gets taken from you by three people at ringside, many of whom will have never even taken a punch in their life, many of whom would never even have probably sparred or even hit a heavy bag, much less actually fought. And they're the people who take that win away from you, and there's no repercussions whatsoever. They might get a talking to, well, just that was a bit of a bizarre scorecard. Well, it's subjective. Alright, go on. That's kind of how the British Boxing Board of Control are. It's the same people day in and day out who are doing it. And again, it's not necessarily me having to go with the British Boxing Board of Control per se. It's a wider issue in boxing that needs to be addressed. It really is. This can't be happening. I don't really know how you'd fix it, to be honest with you. For me, it's a weird one, because, like, how do you fix it? The only thing I can think of is that these up and coming judges. Well, honestly, I think maybe a way to fix it would basically be to essentially suspend some judges for really bad decisions, make them explain their scorecard. You know, I was looking at the DAZN card there, and for the Jordan Gill fight, which I'll talk about now in a sec, you had Tony Bellew there, who was given his DAZN scorecard, and all the while he's shouting instructions to Jordan Gill, because you can see he was doing that at times in the fight. He's chatting to Eddie Hearn at ringside, and you can see he's looking at his phone. Now, obviously, why would you take his card at face value when it's clear he's kind of looking this way at a fight, he's talking to his promoter, he's on his phone, he's chatting to obviously Bellew's card is not official, but why would you take something like that serious? The Bellew scorecard is not official. It's not one you take as gospel, but it kind of got me thinking when I seen that. And obviously with the judges, it's not going to be as clear cut as that they're kind of on their own. But how often do you reckon a judge may get distracted during a fight? They may look away. They may see something else in the crowd. They may miss certain things. I'm racking my brain trying to think how we can get around this to make it not happen again. And I genuinely, I'm sure there is other alternatives, but I do genuinely think the best way is disciplinary action over these bad decisions. When they're so clear cut, something needs to be done. In terms of the actual card itself, it wasn't the worst. I didn't think, there was some fun fights on it. Obviously, I think the fight everyone was kind of talking about, maybe not in a positive light, was Nicky Campbell versus that Jay McFarlane guy. That was like people were saying like a Witherspoons fight. Obviously that's probably more kind of what happened in the UK. We have Witherspoons here, but they're nowhere near as good. It was it was fun to watch. I mean, both guys looked absolutely horrendous. I think the kind of thing that really I was looking at after was when Nicky Campbell won the fight, it was like he was hugging his trainer. But when you actually look at it, I don't think he was even able to stand properly. He was that out of breath. It was like his trainer was holding him up. He was that gassed by the end of it. Very, very poor both fighters were. Nicky Campbell is going to get knocked out sooner or later because he's absolutely garbage. That's the thing about Sky. They don't really have, like Nathan Gorman being their best heavyweight, that really is scraping the barrel when Nathan Gorman is probably your best heavyweight that you have signed. Because, well, actually, I was telling you, they have Hughie Fury as well, actually. He is better than Nathan Gorman, but still, they don't have much depth in terms of heavyweights. They have that Steve Robinson guy who's garbage, lost a few weeks ago. They have this Nicky Campbell guy who's going to get knocked out sooner or later. They need to get some more heavyweights. They need to get some bigger name heavyweights because heavyweight division is where it's at. And I think Boxer and Ben Shalom, I think they will go down that road and get some more heavyweights. And they have Fraser Clark who's just turned pro. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. In terms of the Rabise Ramirez versus Eric Donovan fight, very impressed with Ramirez I was. Very, very, very impressed. He really is fighting his feet, finding his own style, starting to hit a bit harder, great shot selection, composed, comfy, not rushing his work. And I really did think Eric Donovan will put up a much better performance than he did. Showed heart, but he was completely outmatched now, gunned in there. And Ramirez, rough start to his pro career, but he is definitely turning it around, and he is going to be a problem, I reckon, in the next year or two. He's looking very good. So that was last night's card. Tonight's card, the Akali card, less said about the main event the better. It was a horrible fight. It was just a hug fest. It was messy, it was scrappy, it was just not fun. But on the undercard, we had Jordan Gill against a guy called Kareem. I can't remember his last name. But I've seen him fight before against Liam McGregor. We stopped it around. This fight was fantastic. I worry about Jordan Gill post-fight because he took some shots, but he got dropped. I believe it was the 7th or the 8th round. And yeah, he was dropped, wasn't ideal, but after that, he kind of got in a headlock. It was a weird clinch, and he fell head first on the canvas. And honestly, I was worried about him because when he hit his head off the canvas and he was lying face down, he looked in another world. He looked concussed. And I was worried. I have to say I was worried about him because he didn't look right at all. And, he obviously was able to survive. I was kind of thinking Dave Colwell should pull him out. He didn't. He was able to survive, landed a tremendous one-punch knockout, and it really was tremendous. And it was near the end of that round as well, which I genuinely thought would have been his last round. I think the referee would have maybe intervened, or Dave Colwell would have stopped it. But tremendously entertaining. But good lord, did Jordan Gill look poor after the fight? And not in terms of his overall. He didn't look $1 million in the fight, but after he looked, I was worried about him. I was worried that maybe there was a bit of damage, but I worried that there might have been something that could have really, had long-lasting effects. I think Jordan Gill at European level has found his limit. I think that fight's going to take a lot out of him. It's going to take a lot out of Jordan Gill, and I wouldn't be shocked if, we see him in his next fight maybe not looking the best. Wouldn't shock me at all if we see that. Campbell Hatton also fought on the card, and I gotta say, kid impressed me. I'm going to say impressed me in terms of his improvement. He still looked very poor, still has very limited punching power, but he looked better in terms of the overall performance. He looked a lot sharper, learned a bit things in the gym, so big up to Campbell Hatton. He is getting there. He is improving. I don't think he's going to go necessarily far in the sport, but he is getting better. And again, as I said about Campbell Hatton, he actually wants to be a boxer. Tommy Fury wants to be a celebrity. You know, that's all he wants. He wants to be a celebrity. He doesn't give a what's about boxing. Campbell Hatton, you could tell he does. You can tell he does. He is trying. So that was those cards. It was cards in America. Gerwin in Cajas, I should say, lost last night. Now, I actually picked him to win that fight against Fernando Montiel, I think his name was. And yeah, like, I mean, he hadn't been looking the best ever since he had that split draw a couple of years ago. His kind of stocks seemed to have taken a dip. There was talk about him possibly facing Nathan Ayre. Remember, Nathan Ayre said at one point he'd be interested in that fight to go down to 115. Thank God that didn't happen. Because I don't know how Ayre would have looked, and if he had any point, Ayre would have banged. So, like, that's kind of, I think that he's kind of seen better days at this stage. I mean, Top Rank were selling him quite big when he turned over, like it's the next Manny Pacquiao, or the next big fighter from the Philippines. And Chris Colbert lost last night as well. I picked him to win as well. He was dropped very heavily in that 7th round, very heavily knocked down, and that was a late replacement. It was a good card that Showtime put on. Showtime really do see putting on the better cards of the two. Between Fox and Showtime, the really good fights and the really competitive cards tend to go on Showtime. So that was kind of a recap of the action. There was nothing on any of the other nights, wasn't there? No, there wasn't anything on the other nights, unless I'm very much mistaken. Everything else seemed to be, there or thereabouts on the Saturday and Sunday. So let's start with the news that broke on Friday, May 7th. Is it Cinco de Mayo weekend, or is it? Yeah, that's Cinco de Mayo weekend. We have Canelo Alvarez versus Dimitri Bivol. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? It's going to be on DAZN. It's going to be on DAZN pay-per-view. All right, the whole pay-per-view is dead. Well, it's been resurrected, like E.T. So it's going to be on DAZN, but it's only going to be on DAZN in the US. Okay, so I think the price it's saying here is going to be $60 pay-per-view if you are a DAZN subscriber. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think DAZN in the US is priced at $20. So essentially, well, like I'm trying to work this out here, right? So if you're not subscribed to DAZN, it's $79.99, and if you are subscribed to DAZN, it's $59.99. But if you are subscribed to DAZN, you're paying $19.99, I believe it is. So you're basically paying the same thing if you work it out like that. Your subscription on top of the pay-per-view, you're basically paying the same as someone who's paying the once off. So that's it, you're basically paying that. In the UK, it will not be on pay-per-view, of course. The Canelo Bivol one is an interesting fight. It really is. I don't think they could have got away with putting that on pay-per-view over here, to be honest with you. Because I think of it like this, right? If it was Billy Joe, if he'd have fought Bivol last summer and was fighting Billy Joe this summer, I reckon they might have done it, because people know Billy Joe over here. But Bivol is not a big name. Now, Canelo against Bivol, it's an interesting fight. It's a very, very, very competitive fight, make no mistake about it. People saying Canelo's going to blow Bivol out of the water. He ain't. It's going to be a hell of a fight. It's going to be a competitive fight. It's going to be a real boxing match. I can't see this being a rock'em sock'em robots affair or, anything like that. I think this is going to be a pure boxing match. I think that Bivol has fought he's coasted through his last few fights without ever stepping on the gas. And I wonder if that is kind of engraved in him now, that he kind of is like a car that's stuck in third gear and he can't get into fourth and fifth. Because that's how he seemed in his last few performances. Against Canelo, he's going to need to find them fifth and sixth gears, definitely. Obviously, provided Canelo gets through Dimitri Bivol. And, Eddie Hearn was already saying that, it's Triple G next after. So I wonder, like, they're already talking as though Canelo was getting over this hump and then going straight into Triple G. So it makes me kind of worry for Dimitri Bivol. If he does do enough to win this fight, will the officials be, legit? But the Canelo the Triple G trilogy in September, DAZN have always been big on that fight. DAZN have always wanted that fight. They seem to really believe, they've wanted that fight. When Canelo signed with them back in 2018, They really do seem to believe that will still do good numbers, and I suspect it probably will. There is still, like, Triple G hasn't lost since the Canelo fight, and I do think there is still, like, amongst the casual audience, they'll probably still see that fight as being a really, really competitive fight. Me personally, I see Canelo stopping Triple G. I think Triple G will get past Murata, because I don't think Murata's fought since 2019. So that long bout of inactivity is not going to help him, and I do see him getting past it in April. But Triple G is over 40, will be over 40 by the time. And, you know, I just don't. I think Canelo is in his prime and Triple G is well past it. I'll take the fight for what it is, but I would, look, it's not a fight I really want to see, truth be told, but look, it is what it is. In terms of other fights that are being talked about, a rematch between Naoya Inoue and Nonito Donaire is reportedly very close, according to Bob Arum. He said it depends on the Japanese government lifting the Holocaust restrictions, and they believe they'll be okay to go on possibly April the 3rd. It's a very quick turnaround. Oh, sorry, no, April, not April the 3rd. It's 3 Knockdown Reels who reported it. But sometime in April. That's interesting. I like that fight. I think that'll be a very good fight. I do think that Naoya Inoue against, I think it's always going to be a good fight, but I think Naoya Inoue may just know what he's dealing with regards Nonito Donaire. But Nonito Donaire is still exceptionally dangerous. I mean, that left hook, in my opinion, is the single hardest left hook in the bantamweight. It's the single hardest punch in the bantamweight division, never mind left hook. Naoya Inoue may be the most heavy-handed puncher, but that one shot is the most explosive. That's the shot where if you get hit with that Nonito Donaire left hook clean, you're gone. You're gone. You're gone. That punch is is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous left hook. Really is. The other big news that came is that Tyson Fury, Dillian Whyte. Now, I talked about this. This pretty much helped me eat for the whole week in terms of the views and stuff like that. But yeah, look, we have this fight signed and sealed, April 23rd, WBC heavyweight title on the line, Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte. Wembley Stadium in London. Will it fill Wembley? I suspect it probably will. I think it's a great fight. I think both guys, big names certainly in the UK. Made no sense to do anywhere else, to be honest with you. I mean, if you did this in the US, I just don't see why you would. Tyson Fury has his dance partner in Wilder. Has Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte's not a big enough name in America, so it makes sense to do it in the UK. All British affair. It's going to be a good fight. I can't not see this fight being competitive. If Tyson Fury goes in there and blows Dillian Whyte out, I'd be very surprised. I do think Dillian Whyte, the inactivity may hinder him, because this is the longest stretch of inactivity since the ban, and I do wonder how his chin is going to hold up. Again, he was never remotely tagged against Povetkin. We didn't see how he reacted to being hit on the chin. Well, we're going to see how he's going to react against Tyson Fury. That's what we're going to see. We're going to see how he's going to react against Tyson Fury. In terms of some of the other fights, Joseph Parker and his team, apparently, according to TalkSport, working on potentially facing Joe Joyce next. Now, I like that fight, Joe Joyce versus Joseph Parker. Honestly, I might edge towards Joe Joyce to outwork Joe Parker, but I can see how Joe Parker, looking a lot better under Andy Lee, if he lets his hands go against Joe Joyce, though that's a bit risky, can look spectacular, because Joe Joyce is very slow and cumbersome, and someone like Parker with fast hands may be able to impart like Joe Joyce up in parts. But Joe Joyce is extremely sturdy, he's got a great engine, he's very tough, and he's tremendously physically strong, and he can work that jab very well. So I like that fight, I really do. You'd imagine that would be for an interim WBO title. They're both highly ranked. In terms of some of the other fights that are being talked about, Eddie Hearn has won the purse bid along with Wasserman for the Filip Hrgovic-Zili Zhang fight. Hrgovic versus Zhang. Like, the IBF wanted to have an eliminator rather than just make Hrgovic mandatory. I can get that. Zhang is going to get, the big bang is going to go out in the bang, that's all I'll say. Because I've not been impressed with Zili Zhang. He's nearly 40, and Hrgovic, I would have liked to have seen him in there with Yoka, because I think that Hrgovic would have risen to the occasion. Or when he would have risen to the occasion against Zhang, I think it's a step up from the, what was it, Radonjics of the world and guys like that, but it's not a dramatic step up, if you get me. This one is really sad. I'm sorry to have to report on this. I don't like reporting on this, and it's sad because of the fighter. Scott Fitzgerald has admitted assaulting his girlfriend after a 3-day drink and drug session earlier this month. He kicked her and punched her to the ground, so he's been sentenced to an 18-month community order, which includes 30 days of rehabilitation activities. It's so... What has happened? What has happened to Scott Fitzgerald? This is a fighter in 2019, beat Anthony Fowler, beat Ted Cheeseman for the British title, looked to be going places, tremendously talented fighter, but Scott Fitzgerald, my days, he should be nowhere near a ring. You know, I've seen some people say he needs to get back in the gym and, you know, get back into the ring. I seen him fight, I think that was on the Parker Chisora undercard, the first fight, back in May, and he did not look right in the interviews. It sounded like he was on antidepressants. I hope he sorts his life out. I really do, but it's 2 years ago he was having these issues. He's still having them now. I think we all seen that was a very uncomfortable photo we seen at Christmas time where he looked homeless almost. It's just sad. Tremendously talented fighter whose career is going to go tits up. And he's never going to achieve anything. Well, he's won the British title, but he's never going to achieve what he could have. My days, you know, and that's not me excusing his behaviour there. Absolutely appalling behaviour. You know, what he did there to his girl. It's not me saying, you know, oh, Scott Fitzgerald is a good person, give him a pass. Disgusting behaviour. Absolutely disgusting behaviour from Scott Fitzgerald to assault his girlfriend. That just has no place. It's just sad to see him keep making mistakes, you know. Because you take boxing out of the equation, you know, you don't want to see a man waste his life at the same time, regardless of boxing. You know. Ah, boy. In terms of other boxing news, Frank Warren, old fish eyes, he is like, what is he? He's coming to life, isn't he? He's winning these purse bids. He's won another purse bid against Eddie Hearn. Outbid Eddie Hearn in DAZN for the Demetrius Andre Zach Parker fight. So he has that reportedly set to take place in the UK May 21st. I think Eddie Hearn, so long as he has Canelo, he doesn't really give a you-know-what's. You know, he really just wants the Canelo gravy train. He loves the Canelo, having him there, even on a, and it's not like he even has Canelo on a long-term deal. It's not like Eddie Hearn is saying, yes, I've got Alvarez for the next 3 years. 2 fights. And the likelihood is, if Beterbiev and Smith have a fight, he'll go to ESPN to fight the winner, probably on a fight or a 2-fight deal. You know, Eddie Hearn, I don't think cares as long as he has it, Canelo. And even AJ, probably to a lesser extent now at this stage, because he just knows Canelo is the gift that keeps on giving in terms of money. And the DAZN want Canelo, and I think that's his main priority now at the minute, is just to get Alvarez by hook or by crook, let the purse bids go, and we worry about Alvarez. And then in the next breath, talk about loyalty. Is what it is. Yeah. That's Eddie Hearn. Like, Eddie Hearn doesn't strike me as being he doesn't come across as a bad guy, you know, but he's very businessy. You know, he strikes me as a proper businessman, and, you know, he says a lot of things like be loyal and this, that, and the other, you know, loyalty, etc., etc. You know, Kell Brook wasn't loyal and this, that, and the other. And Kell Brook even says, you too many fighters. Like, I'm looking to make more money, you know, and he made probably more money, you know, going to a boxer to fight Amir Khan. I said it once, I'll say it again. I said it a few weeks ago. I think Eddie Hearn is getting a bit out of touch there. And I saw Hatman say the same in a video, and he picked up on a complaint I've had about the DAZN team, the broadcast team, and I think we're both in agreement, apart from one thing. He says that he would keep Andy Lee and Ade. I agree with him wholeheartedly on that. But he said that he's not a fan of Laura Woods. I disagree. I actually quite like Laura Woods. I think she's good. You know, is she the most charismatic presenter I've ever seen? No. But I think she does a good job. She does know her stuff when it comes to sport. And I think that Laura Woods is one that I would keep. In terms of the rest, I mean, get Bellew, get him out of the zone. Chris Lloyd, get him away. Darren Barker again. Costello, see you later. Go back to BBC, and just a complete overhaul. You know, Hatman said something that I touched on as well, that we need characters. You know, he put it bestly. You're talking about a sport where you're trying to get, you know, some kind of a bit more PC into it, but it's a sport where both guys are trying to, you know, beat the living crap out of one another, where there's trash talking left, right and centre. It just doesn't gel. You know, it just doesn't gel. You know, you need these characters in sport, and you need them in boxing, and you need them on the broadcasting team. You do, and I think that the DAZN need an overhaul in terms of their team, their broadcasting team. Will Eddie Hearn do it? Doubt it. But if he did, I genuinely think if it did, it would help improve it. I think that it's been universal since the start, since he announced that broadcasting team. It's been the start. Myself, Hatman, others, we all said the same thing. Even before, we were like, this is a letdown. You know, this broadcasting team is just not good enough. And obviously, we said we'll see him in action. We've seen him in action. Terrible. You know, things need to change. Will he do it? Doubt it. But, yeah, you can dream. I think that's pretty much it for review of the week. I hope this video's not gone on too long, but I hope you enjoyed it. Nevertheless, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section. Everything I touched on in this video. Leave a like, subscribe of course if you haven't already. People, for now, I'll talk to you. Peace.